When the last picture show hit theaters in 1971, no one expected it to shake Hollywood the way it did. The small-town drama turned into a box office success, earning critical praise and Academy Award glory. But beyond the trophies and ticket sales, the movie became famous for something else. One scene in particular pushed the boundaries of what audiences were used to seeing. Cybill Shepherd's daring pool scene sparked outrage, heated debates, and even bans in some places. It's a moment that still gets talked about today. Join us as we dive into the story behind the film and the scene. The beginning of a small-town story. The Last Picture Show is a 1971 American coming-of-age drama directed by Peter Bogdanovich. He co-wrote the script with Larry McMurtry, and it was based on McMurtry's semi-autobiographical novel from 1966. The story is set in a small oil town in northern Texas between 1951 and 1952. At its core, it follows two high school seniors, Sonny Crawford, played by Timothy Bottoms, and Dwayne Jackson, played by Jeff Bridges. These two boys are best friends, but they are also restless, lost, and trying to figure out what comes next in life. Dwayne is dating J.C. Farrow, the town's most beautiful girl, played by Cybill Shepherd. Her family is rich, and that puts even more distance between her and Dwayne. Sonny, meanwhile, hides his own secret crush on J.C. That is where the quiet tension of the story begins, and from there, things only get more complicated. The movie also introduced a large ensemble cast, including Ben Johnson as Sam the Lion, Cloris Leachman as Ruth Popper, and Ellen Burstyn as Lois Farrow. Each of these characters added depth to the small town, showing lives filled with secrets, disappointments, and longing. But beyond the characters, the film itself turned into something huge. Released by Columbia Pictures on October 22, 1971, it grossed $29 million on just a $1.3 million budget. It was nominated for 8 Academy Awards, with Johnson and Leachman both taking home trophies. It became more than just a movie. It became a portrait of life in a forgotten town, and it cemented its place in Hollywood history. Yet for all of its praise, The Last Picture Show was not without scandal. But before we take a look at that, let's see how the film came to life. Peter Bogdanovich was only 31 when he stepped into The Last Picture Show. At the time, he was known more as a stage actor, film essayist, and critic. He had directed one film before, Targets, which he worked on with his wife and collaborator Polly Platt. The idea for The Last Picture Show came to him in a very unexpected way. While standing in line at a drugstore, Bogdanovich picked up a paperback copy of Larry McMurtry's novel, The Last Picture Show. At first, he wasn't interested. The back of the book described it as a story about kids growing up in Texas, and Bogdanovich put it back on the rack. But fate had other plans. Actor Sal Mineo later gave Polly Platt a copy of the book, saying, "I always wanted to be in this, but I'm a little too old now." Mineo encouraged Platt and Bogdanovich to make it into a movie. Not long after, producer Bert Schneider asked Bogdanovich what he wanted to direct next. He didn't have an answer, but Polly Platt spoke up about McMurtry's book. That single moment shifted everything. Schneider showed interest, and with Platt's encouragement, Bogdanovich agreed to take on the project. Together with McMurtry and Platt, he adapted the book into what would become one of the most memorable films of the 1970s. Still, Bogdanovich was unsure, but his wife pushed him to believe in the story, and he finally committed. The project now had its direction, but the road ahead held many choices that would make the film stand out from anything else at the time. Building the vision. Stephen Friedman, a lawyer at Columbia Pictures, was eager to move into film production. He had bought the rights to the book, so Bogdanovich brought him in as producer. At this point, one of the most important voices guiding Bogdanovich came from his houseguest, Orson Welles. The legendary filmmaker gave Bogdanovich advice that would shape the movie's look. Welles suggested filming in black and white, which was unusual by the early 1970s, but he believed it would give the film a timeless, powerful feel. Bogdanovich agreed, and this bold choice would later become one of the reasons the movie stood apart from others of its time. For location, the team chose Archer City in north-central Texas, Larry McMurtry's own hometown. In the novel, McMurtry had renamed the town Thalia, but Bogdanovich went with the name Anarene, taken from a nearby ghost town. This decision gave the film a sense of authenticity while connecting it to the spirit of fading Western towns. The connection deepened when Bogdanovich tied the movie's final screening, The Last Picture Show, to Howard Hawks' Red River, a 1948 classic Western. That film played a symbolic role as Sonny and Dwayne watched it during the last night of the theater. After filming wrapped, Bogdanovich returned to Los Angeles to edit the film. He worked alone on a Moviola machine and often said he edited the film himself, but he refused to credit himself, explaining that director and co-writer was enough for his name. When the Motion Picture Editors Guild demanded that someone be credited, Bogdanovich suggested Don Camburn, who was working next door on Drive, he said. Camburn later disputed this version, saying Bogdanovich had already shown a rough cut to guests like Jack Nicholson and Bob Rafelson, and then asked Camburn to step in. Either way, the final cut came together through both men's hands, shaping the film into the version that stunned critics and audiences alike. Yet there were still more unique decisions to be made, including one about Bogdanovich's name on the film. A unique touch. Bogdanovich wanted something different when it came to the credits. He received a rare waiver from the Directors Guild of America that allowed his name to appear at the very end of the film. Instead of opening with his credit, the director wanted the audience to see the names of the actors first, believing it was more meaningful after their performances. It was an unusual request, but it showed how strongly he believed in giving recognition to his cast. The movie itself would later be remembered not just for its story, but for its bold presentation choices like these. Years later, The Last Picture Show would be revisited in a variety of ways. In 2010, the Criterion Collection released it as part of a box set called America Lost and Found: The BBS Story. This version included a high-definition transfer of Bogdanovich's director's cut, along with documentaries about the making of the film, interviews, commentaries, screen tests, and location footage. Fans could also hear Bogdanovich in a 2009 Q&A, plus a 1972 television interview with director François Truffaut discussing New Hollywood. These releases gave new audiences a deeper look into what made the film so important. But the biggest change came not in the box sets, but in a re-edit that Bogdanovich himself created. This director's cut gave the world a longer, fuller version of the story that had first shocked theaters in 1971. And some of the restored scenes made the film even bolder than before. The director's cut. In 1992, Bogdanovich re-edited the film to create what he called the director's cut. The original release in 1971 had been cut down to 119 minutes because Columbia Pictures insisted on a firm time limit. With that restriction gone, Bogdanovich restored 7 minutes of footage, creating a 127-minute version for VHS, Laserdisc, and DVD. This longer version would become the most widely known cut of the film. Among the restored scenes was one between JC and Abilene in the pool hall, a moment that played before he drove her home, and she said, "What a night! I never thought this would happen." Another restored scene showed Sonny and Dwayne in Sam's cafe, making plans for their road trip to Mexico right before they tell Sam outside the pool hall. Smaller moments also returned. One showed JC, Dwayne, and Sonny driving in her convertible with a little dog chasing them as they sang an upbeat version of their school song. Another featured Sonny cruising through town in his pickup, staring longingly into Sam's pool hall, cafe, and theater from which he had been banned. There was also a scene showing the senior picnic caravan passing the fishing tank where Sonny once fished with Sam and Billy. In that moment, Sonny sheds a tear for his lost youth and friend. Other restored footage made existing scenes richer. Ruth and Sonny's return from the doctor had added dialogue, as did the moment when Billy was returned to Sam after his encounter with Jemmy Sue. Even individual shots, like a Greg Toland-inspired deep focus outside the Royal Theatre, were put back in. These changes gave the film even more emotional weight and reminded audiences why it had stood the test of time. The web of relationships. The plot of the Last Picture Show may seem simple at first, but it unfolds into a tangle of relationships, betrayals, and heartbreaks. After Sonny ends things with his girlfriend, he finds himself kissing Ruth Popper at a Christmas dance. Ruth is the lonely wife of his high school coach, and her sadness draws Sonny in. At the same time, JC is pulled in another direction. At the dance, she's invited by Lester Marlowe to a skinny-dipping pool party hosted by Bobby Sheen, a wealthy young man who looks like a much better prospect than Dwayne. These invitations and stolen kisses set the stage for the chaos that follows. JC keeps Dwayne on a string, but secretly hopes for more glamorous adventures. Sonny, still drawn to JC, gets himself caught between desire and loyalty. The town itself plays a role too. Sam the Lion, the only real figure of authority and respect, tries to guide the boys. When Dwayne, Sonny, and their friends take their disabled friend Billy to a prostitute, Sam finds out. His anger is real, and he bans them from his businesses, the movie theater, the cafe, and the pool hall. For a moment, the boys realize the weight of their actions. But the grip of youth and temptation is hard to escape. This back and forth between small choices and big consequences keeps the story alive, and each step brings the characters closer to breaking points. The audience watches, knowing things cannot end quietly in a town where everyone sees everything. Love, betrayal, and loss. As time goes on, the relationships in the Last Picture Show only grow more painful. JC wants acceptance into Bobby Sheen's wild circle, and to get it, she decides to lose her virginity. She invites Dwayne to a motel, but he fails the first time. The second time, it works, but only long enough for JC to get what she wants. She immediately breaks up with Dwayne, chasing after Bobby, only to find out he has already married someone else. Hurt but restless, JC turns to Abilene, her father's roughneck foreman. Their encounter is cold and empty, and when her mother Lois catches her sneaking in, JC breaks down in tears. Yet Lois herself admits her own disappointments with men, proving how cycles of unhappiness repeat in this small town. Meanwhile, Dwayne, heartbroken, enlists in the army and prepares to go off to the Korean War. During this time, Sonny drifts toward JC, leaving Ruth behind. Their romance grows, but it is shaky from the start. Dwayne returns home with a new car and old anger. He and Sonny fight over JC, and Sonny ends up in the hospital with a bad eye injury. Even when he heals, things are never quite the same. Later, JC and Sonny attempt to run away together, eloping to Oklahoma. But their plan fails when they are caught, and Sonny is lectured by JC's father, Gene. On the way home, JC's mother, Lois, shares a painful truth. Sam the Lion had been her first true love. Her honesty makes Sonny realize how messy and fragile relationships can be in their town. The failed elopement marks a turning point. The dream of escaping with JC crumbles. But Sonny's troubles are far from over, because what comes next is far more tragic, pulling him into grief he can no longer run from. The final goodbye. By the time Dwayne is preparing to leave for war, he and Sonny make peace with one another. They go together to the movie theater on its last night of operation, where the final film shown is Red River. It feels symbolic, a reminder of how everything in their small town is fading. But the real blow comes the next morning. Sonny's friend Billy, the disabled boy who often swept the streets, is struck and killed by a truck. The townspeople gather, but instead of mourning Billy, they blame him for being stupid and careless. Their coldness pushes Sonny over the edge. He yells at them for their cruelty and carries Billy's body himself, covering him tenderly with his Letterman jacket. This moment changes Sonny. Angry, tired, and broken, he drives to the city limits, ready to leave it all behind. Yet something inside him makes him turn back. He returns to Ruth, the woman he had abandoned for JC. At first, Ruth is furious, filled with anger and pain. But when she sees how devastated Sonny is, her walls drop. In one of the film's most moving moments, she comforts him, telling him softly, "Never you mind, honey, never you mind." The film ends on this note of quiet sadness, showing that life in Anarene is not about happy endings. It is about surviving, about small acts of kindness and love in a world that can feel brutally empty. This closing moment sealed the film's legacy as something raw, honest, and unforgettable. But as audiences learned, one bold scene earlier in the film would push Cybill Shepherd into the spotlight in a way that went far beyond the screen. When a scene went too far. In 1973, The Last Picture Show ran into serious trouble because of its daring pool party scene. That skinny-dipping moment, led by Cybill Shepherd as JC, became the center of controversy. In Phoenix, Arizona, the film was banned after the city attorney told a drive-in theater manager that the movie violated a state obscenity law. The situation quickly turned into a legal battle. A federal court finally decided the film was not obscene, but the scandal had already left its mark. In Rapides Parish, Louisiana, the district attorney, Ed Ware, also tried to block the showing. He managed to do so for a short time, but once again the theater fought back in court and won. These bans only made the film more famous. The controversy pushed audiences to see it for themselves. For Peter Bogdanovich, this bold risk became a breakthrough. His career as a director skyrocketed after the movie's release, proving that even scandal could work in his favor. But while the film itself drew attention, the way the cast came together also tells an interesting story, one full of surprises, changes, and lucky chances. Choices that shaped the cast. Casting the film was not as straightforward as it seemed. Ellen Burstyn was first asked to read for Genevieve, but she felt a stronger pull toward the part of Lois Farrow, JC's mother. She even read for Ruth Popper, showing her range. Bogdanovich thought she was perfect for any of them and let her choose. Burstyn decided on Lois because she found the role more interesting, and that choice paid off. Randy Quaid, on the other hand, was asked to read for Bobby Sheen, the handsome, wealthy boy from Wichita Falls. But Bogdanovich saw him differently. He decided Quaid would be better as Lester Marlowe, a dorky rich kid, and he was right. Meanwhile, Cybill Shepherd's casting became one of the biggest stories. This was her film debut, and Bogdanovich discovered her on the cover of Glamour magazine. It was a bold choice, but one that helped launch her career. Some casting moments came out of necessity. The actors playing high school students needed to be over 18 because of the film's sexual scenes and nudity. The only exception was 15-year-old Sam Bottoms, who played Billy. He was actually the younger brother of Timothy Bottoms, who played Sonny. In a twist of fate, Sam wasn't even supposed to be in the film. He was visiting his brother on set, and Bogdanovich decided to cast him at the last minute, but only if he got his braces removed. These choices gave the film a mix of fresh faces and experienced actors. Yet even with the cast set, there were still disagreements about who auditioned for what, and some of those disagreements continue to this day. Tension, talent, and real feelings. Cloris Leachman's role as Ruth Popper is a perfect example of how memory can differ. She once said she never auditioned, but was offered the role after Ellen Burstyn chose Lois. Bogdanovich, however, recalled her reading for the part. What cannot be argued is the impact of her performance. In her final scene, she delivered everything in a single take, with no rehearsal. Afterward, she told Bogdanovich, "I can do better." He replied, "No, you can't. You just won the Oscar." That one-take moment earned her an Academy Award and proved his instincts were right. But not all moments on set were smooth. Bogdanovich often ate with the actors instead of the crew, which created tension. He believed staying close to the cast allowed him to shape their performances without outside interference. One day, he even fired a crew member who told Cybill Shepherd to smile more. To him, controlling the atmosphere on set was just as important as directing the camera. To strengthen performances, Cloris Leachman and Eileen Brennan also adopted Texas accents full-time while on location. This helped them stay in character. But behind the camera, emotions ran high too. Just like JC's character attracted every boy in town, Cybill Shepherd became an object of affection on set. Jeff Bridges had a short fling with her, something Shepherd later admitted was the only time she ever slept with a co-star. Timothy Bottoms had a crush on her but never pursued it, though Shepherd admitted she found him attractive. Most importantly, Peter Bogdanovich himself fell in love with Shepherd, even though he was married to Polly Platt, the film's production designer. This created a storm behind the scenes and eventually led to a relationship between the director and his leading lady. The film's realism came not just from its script, but also from the raw feelings running through its cast and crew. And some of those choices ended up making history. What could have been? Looking back, many things could have turned out differently. Sal Mineo, the actor who first gave Polly Platt the book, once hoped to star in the film himself, but he felt he was too old. The role of Sam the Lion was first offered to James Stewart, who liked the script but was already tied to a television series. Ben Johnson was Bogdanovich's second choice, but at first he refused, saying the script had too many words. Only after John Ford, Bogdanovich's friend, convinced him did Johnson agree. If that hadn't worked, Tex Ritter would have been offered the role, and his son John Ritter was even considered for Sonny. Sissy Spacek was also in the running for J.C. Farrow before Shepherd was chosen. Dennis Quaid, then 16, was considered for Billy since his brother Randy was already cast as Lester. In the book, Coach Popper is suggested to be a closeted gay man with feelings for his team's quarterback. A scene was supposed to show this more clearly, but it was never filmed due to budget cuts. What remains is a subtle moment where Popper swats the quarterback in the gym, and the boy looks back with a smile. Some choices, however, were left to the actors themselves. Cybill Shepherd was given the option to skip the nude scenes. She asked Ellen Burstyn, Cloris Leachman, and Eileen Brennan what she should do. All three told her to go ahead, and that gave her the courage to appear nude. These moments show how much of the film's history depended on chance, persuasion, and bold choices. In the end, the risks paid off. For Jeff Bridges and Cybill Shepherd, it was a star-making film. For Cloris Leachman, it was an Oscar-winning role. And for Peter Bogdanovich, it was the beginning of a career shaped by both brilliance and controversy. But what made this film stand out was not only the story itself, but the strange mix of influences behind it. The contradictions behind the camera. What made The Last Picture Show so unique was the way it balanced very different styles. On one hand, it was an art house film directed by a young New Yorker who loved cinema history. On the other hand, it was set in a small Texas town, filled with dust, heat, and broken lives. It was filmed in black and white, which gave it a classic, timeless feel, even though by the 1970s, color was the standard. The film came at a time when Easy Rider had just opened doors for a new generation of bold filmmakers like Bob Rafelson, Hal Ashby, and Dennis Hopper. But while Easy Rider was rebellious and confrontational, The Last Picture Show took a slower, sadder tone. Its rhythm came from country music, drifting through the soundtrack, painting the picture of small-town life with honesty and pain. The story came from Larry McMurtry's 1966 novel, which he described as a love letter to his hometown. At the start of the book, he wrote, "The Last Picture Show is lovingly dedicated to my hometown." But, as he admitted, it was a love letter with barbs. His town, Archer City, called Thalia in the book, was not romantic. It was filled with poverty, gossip, and loneliness. Summers burned, winters froze, and life left little joy beyond the pool hall and the movie theater. People calculated every move, every secret, and every touch. As Genevieve, the cafe waitress played by Eileen Brennan, warned Sonny, "One thing I know for sure is that a person can't sneeze in this town without somebody offering him a handkerchief. It's an awful small town for any kind of carrying on." This mix of honesty and sadness created a world that audiences instantly recognized. The town in the film may have been in Texas, but the story could have belonged to almost any small place where dreams fade and everyone knows your secrets. And the more audiences watched, the more they realized these characters felt like people they had always known. The familiar faces of youth. One reason the film still connects is because the characters feel so real. There is Sonny, the quiet, thoughtful boy, played by Timothy Bottoms. There is Dwayne, the restless rebel, played by Jeff Bridges. And there is Jacy, the beautiful girl every boy desires, played by Cybill Shepherd. These types, thoughtful dreamers, cocky rebels, and tempting beauties, can be seen in so many other films that came after. The The daring, drunken nights, the games between boys and girls, and the awkwardness of first love all ring true. Some films played these moments for comedy, but The Last Picture Show treated them as serious, painful, and even tragic. Take the scene where Sonny sleeps with Ruth Popper, the lonely wife of his coach. Instead of glamour, the camera lingers on her tear-stained face as the bed creaks. Or the scene where JC and Dwayne finally sleep together. He fails the first time, leaving her impatient, even cruel. But later, she lies to her friends, pretending the moment was magical. These moments show how awkward, disappointing, and real teenage encounters can be. They weren't polished or romanticized, but raw and honest. And this honesty is what made the film unforgettable. But while the characters were fictional, real-life emotions on set mirrored them in unexpected ways. When real life crossed into the story. Just as the characters in the movie were drawn to JC, the actress playing her, Cybill Shepherd, became the center of attention behind the scenes. Bogdanovich discovered her when she was just a model on the cover of a magazine. He cast her, and during filming, he fell in love with her. This affair ended his marriage with Polly Platt, who had been his wife and creative partner. Shepherd later became his muse, but their later films together never repeated the success of The Last Picture Show. Timothy Bottoms admitted he had a crush on her, but didn't pursue it. Shepherd herself said she found him attractive, but their timing never matched. Jeff Bridges also had a brief fling with her. Off-screen, just like on-screen, JC was the girl everyone wanted. While these behind-the-scenes stories are interesting, the film's most powerful memory still lies in its performances. The final breakdown scene with Cloris Leachman as Ruth Popper remains devastating even decades later. In it, she screams, throws a coffee pot, and finally takes Sonny's hands into her own. Critics say she played it like a character from a Greek tragedy, not just a coach's wife in a small-town drama. That raw emotion is why she won an Oscar. But time moved on. When Bogdanovich returned to the story in 1990 with the sequel Texasville, the magic was gone. The young characters who once carried so much yearning were now middle-aged, and their struggles no longer had the same effect. In truth, the real sequel to The Last Picture Show was not Texasville, but all the movies that followed its mold, films about youth, loss, and the end of innocence. And yet, even among them all, none managed to capture the same honesty and sadness of Bogdanovich's masterpiece. Do you think Cybill Shepherd's pool scene was too daring for its time, or was it simply ahead of its time? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time!